Pirkei Eliezer, Perek Mem Vav. In the previous Perek, so the Medrash, which we didn't learn yet, but in the previous Perek in Mem Hey, so the Medrash goes through the whole story of the Chet HaEgel, of the golden calf that the Jews did at Har Sinai. Now it's going to speak about what happened at Har Sinai in a more general way, about Matan Torah and about the aftermath of the story of the golden calf. Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah Omer. Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah says, Erev Shabbos b'shisha l'chodesh, on Erev Shabbos, on a Friday, b'shisha l'chodesh, on the 6th of the month, meaning the 6th day of Sivan, which we're saying came on a Friday, b'sheish ha'is b'yoyim, at 6 hours into the day, meaning midday, kiblu Yisrael es dibros. The Jews accepted the dibros, the words of Hashem, the Decalogue, the 10 Commandments. It's an interesting thing. The Gemara in Masechah Shabbos brings a argument between two sages, between the Chachamim and between the sages, between the Chachamim and the Rabbi Yossi. Between the Chachamim and Rabbi Yossi, what day was Matan Torah? Did the Jews accept the Torah on Vav Sivan or on Zayin Sivan? That's the machlekes in the Gemara. And the Gemara says, but everybody agrees that the Torah was given on Shabbos. That's what the Gemara says. Everyone agrees the Torah is given on Shabbos. The question is, was Vav Sivan Shabbos or was Zayin Sivan Shabbos? And the Gemara says that the machlekes is really how to calculate the calendar of that year. Was Nisan was full, but was Iyar a full month or not a full month or whatever, to come out what day of the week was Matan Torah was. If we're assuming Matan Torah was on Shabbos, what day of the month was that Shabbos? Was it Vav Sivan or Zayin Sivan? Right? So we celebrate Shavuos on Vav and Zayin Sivan, or really Vav Sivan and Chutz La'aretz Vav and Zayin. But that's the machlekes in the Gemara and Shabbos. So over here, Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah is taking an opinion that's not like either of those two opinions of the Gemara. He's saying that no. First of all, it was on Erev Shabbos. It wasn't on Shabbos. And second of all, it was on the 6th of the month, of the 6th of Sivan, not the 7th of Sivan. Meaning, in the Gemara, there's an opinion that holds that the 6th of Sivan was Erev Shabbos. But that opinion holds that the Torah was given on Zayin Sivan, because the Gemara says everyone agrees that the Torah was given on Shabbos. Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah holds like that opinion in understanding the structure of the calendar for that year, but disagrees that the Torah was given on Zayin. He says no, it wasn't given on Zayin, it was given on Vav, which was Erev Shabbos. But that's this line over here vis-a-vis the Gemara and Shabbos. There's an interesting piece in the Mishnah Berurah. He writes in Hilchos Shavuos, the Mishnah Berurah brings one of the reasons why do we eat milchigs, dairy products specifically on Shavuos. So the Mishnah Berurah says that one of the reasons is because when they got the Torah, so they didn't have any fleshig vessels. They didn't have meaty vessels to cook their meat in. So therefore they specifically ate milchigs, dairy products. That's what the Mishnah Berurah says. Elsewhere, the same person, the author of the Mishnah Berurah, the Chafetz Chaim, Rabbi Yisrael Meir Kagan, so he writes in a different sefer of his called Likutei Halachos on Maseches Chulin. In the back of Likutei Halachos on Maseches Chulin, he writes that he brings this opinion again, and he says that opinion in why we eat milchigs on Shavuos only works according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah that the Torah is given on Friday. Because if the Torah is given on Shabbos, even if you had fleshig dishes, you can't cook meat anyways because it's Shabbos. You can't cook. So you have to say that whole understanding only goes with Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah, who said that the Torah is given on Friday. Another point over here. This is a very interesting idea. Rabbi Leomi Izmir says that the Torah was the Medrash says the Torah is given on Friday on the 6th of the month at 6 hours into the day. So he says we're giving all these details. What's the point in giving all these details? He says it's a remez, an allusion to how the Geula in the future is going to be. It says Chazal tell us that there's 6,000 years, 6,000 year periods of the world. Of the world's existence, right? So it says that in the 6th millennium, meaning in the 5,000 whatever, in the 6th millennium, the Moshiach is going to come, because just like the Torah was given on the sixth day of the week, on Friday, which is the sixth day of the week, 6 out of 7, so the Torah is going to be given in the sixth millennium, the 6 out of 7 of the millennia. The Geula is going to happen then. And so it's just like the Medrash says that it happened on Erev Shabbos 6 hours into the day, halfway into the day. So too, he says that that's gonna be mimicked in what year the Geula is going to happen. So if you make a cheshbon, the implications of what he's saying is like this: that it's going to be 5,000 something, right? So 5,000 what? So you have to do 6 hours into the day, which if 6 hours into the day is really three fourths of the day, because you have the whole night, which is 12 hours, 6 hours into the day, which is 18, right? And then you have the rest of the day, which is the last fourth of the day. So you have 3/4 of the hours, 3/4 into the day. So you have 3/4 into. He's saying that 3/4 into the sixth millennia. That's when Moshiach is going to come. That's what he says. So what does that come out to? That comes out to the year 5,750, right? Because 3/4 is 75%, which is out of 1,000 is 750, right? You got that? Now the year 5,750 is of course 1990. So it seems like he's wrong. I don't know.
But the Rebbe made a very big deal about that year.
About the year 1990? What did he say?
He said it was the year of miracles and everything else, because he brought that down, what you're saying.
Really? He mentioned this?
Oh, yeah.
That also, it could be that there are Mefarshim that say that because we got out of Mitzrayim early, so there's extra years to the Galus that are supposed to be appended to our current Galus. So, like, maybe if you add in, really the Gula for the end of our Galus is supposed to be 1990, and if you add in a few more years to make up to finish off the 400 years that we were supposed to be in Mitzrayim, so then maybe it'll be a little bit longer. So maybe it's not completely wrong. I don't know. We'll just we should merit to see it, and it'll happen in our days. Fine. So that was 6 hours into the day. That's when they got the Torah on Erev Shabbos. Now, how long did Matan Torah happen? A lot of people ask this question. Well, the Medrash explains it. The Medrash says, 9 hours into the day, the Jews returned to their tents. So the Matan Torah started 6 hours into the day, let's say 12 o'clock in the afternoon, and they went back home 9 hours into the day, which is about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Right? Fine. The Medrash says an interesting line. It says, "V'haya haman muchan lahem l'shnei yamim," and the man was prepared for them for 2 days. Because we're talking about Friday. On Friday there was double man, so it says the man was prepared for them for 2 days. Not sure what exactly is it trying to say over here. It could be, and it seems like that the Marzu is sort of trying to say this idea, and maybe the Radal is also saying this, that the Medrash is trying to answer a question. If they were so busy, they came home 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday, where do they get ready for Shabbos? Like when they start doing their preparations. So the Medrash is sort of answering that question by saying, no, everything was already prepared. They didn't have to worry about cooking or whatever, because they already had their mun from early in the morning. The mun came early in the morning, so they were already prepared. They were good for Friday and Shabbos, so they didn't have to do any preparations. So they could go home at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's not such a big deal. It could be that's what the Medrash is saying over here. Lefichach, says the Medrash, therefore, Shavsu ba'isei Shabbos, they rested on that Shabbos. Smechem b'simchas hachag. They were happy with the happiness of the Chag, of the Yom Tov. Now, the Radha asks the question, he says, what do you mean? We said the Torah was given on the 6th of Sivan, right? So this next day, that Shabbos, is the 7th of Sivan. That's not Shavuos anymore. So what does it mean? Smechem b'simchas hachag. They were happy with the happiness of the Yom Tov. It's not really Yom Tov. It's 7th of Sivan is not really Shavuos. In Chatzos we do 7th of Sivan, but really Shavuos is the 6th. So the Radha says that you have to change the gear. It says Smechem kisimchas hachag. They were happy that Shabbos as if it was a Yom Tov. It wasn't really treated as a Yom Tov. They treated it. It was the happiness was on the level as if it was a Yom Tov, but it wasn't. They didn't treat it as an actual Yom Tov. Why were they so happy? Because then they heard the voice of Hashem. Shnema, it says in the pasuk, Kimi kol basar asher shama kol elikim chayim, who is a who of flesh heard the voice of the living God speak. At the end of the passage says, "Medaber miteicha eish," speaking from the fire, "Kamaynu vayachi," like we did and survived. Who was able to hear Hashem speak like us and survive? Nobody. So they were very happy, and that was the cause for this great happiness that they had on that day. Fine. So that was the story of Matan Torah, in the first stage of Matan Torah. They heard it from Hashem, and they were happy, and there was a Shabbos afterwards, etc. Now afterwards, Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu Moshe b'lashon Tekiah. Hashem said to Moshe Rabbeinu b'lashon Tekiah, in a clean language, in a clean expression. He said to him, Lech Amar LiYisrael l'chu ish la'ahala. He said, go tell the Jews that each person should go to his tent. Shnamar, it says in the pasuk, Lech Amar lehem shuvu lechem la'ahalechem. It says, go tell them that they should return to their tents. So what does it mean, their tents? So their tent is an allusion to their wives. It didn't want to say their wives straight out because that's not considered proper speech. So the lashon Tekiah was said in a clean way, in a nice way of saying it. It didn't say go back to your wife. It said go back to your tent. It's also trying to be ramez that what a person does with his wife should be in a tent, shouldn't be publicized, shouldn't be in a public area. That's what it means. Return to your tent, because previously Hashem had told the Jews that they have to separate from their wives in anticipation of Matan Torah. They have to separate their wives. You should prepare for 3 days. Don't approach a woman. Means you should separate from your wife for 3 days before Matan Torah. So now Hashem is saying you can go back to your wife. Everyone could go back to their wife. I mean, there's also, it's a little bit technical, and I don't want to really get into this over here. But there is a discussion over what's the purpose of this pasuk where it says go back to Shuvu lechem la'ahalechem, you return to your tents, return to your wives. What's the purpose of it? Is it coming to tell you that they were previously forbidden to their wives, and now we're saying now you're permitted to wives? Is that all it's coming to do, just to rescind the original prohibition? Or is it coming to tell us another verse that's going to be the mitzvah of Puravu? Is this pasuk another mitzvah of Puravu? It's another instance of the mitzvah? Or is it just coming to tell you that what was forbidden before is now mutter? There's different ways to look at it, and whatever. It's a technical question, but there is such a discussion. Fine. Says the Medrash, Yochel af atop tashuv. You would have thought that when Hashem said that everyone should return to their tents, so he was saying also you, Moshe Rabbeinu, you should also return to your tent, return to your wife. Rather, it's coming to teach you from the day that the Torah is given to the Jews, Moshe Rabbeinu did not approach his wife. It says in the pasuk, and you should stand over here with me. That's what Hashem said to Moshe Rabbeinu. So he said, everyone return to your tents, but you, Moshe, should stand over here with me.
Wasn't Zipporah gone anyways? We learned later that she wasn't there for Matan Torah when Yisro came.
It's a shiloh when Yisro came. If Yisro came before Matan Torah, if Yisro came after Matan Torah. But yeah, it's a good. Yeah, I hear what you're asking.
That was Aaron the Miriam's
complaint.
Yeah, that he wasn't with her.
That he wasn't with his wife, right?
Because that was obviously.
It's also
a year later.
I mean, there's a similar Gemara. The Gemara says that the Gemara Yevamah says that Moshe Rabbeinu did 3 things of his own decision, of his own choice. One of them was that he separated from his wife. One of them was that he broke the Luchos, and one of them was that he added an extra day of preparation before Matan Torah. So when it says that he decided to separate from his wife, so the Gemara says that he made a kal v'chomer. He said that just like when Hashem wanted to speak to Bnei Yisrael, so they had to separate from their wives. So me, who Hashem can speak to me unexpectedly, and I don't know when He's going to speak to me, so for sure I should separate from my wife. So that's why he separated from his wife. And the Gemara says, and Hashem agreed to him post facto, and that's why it says, V'ata poya moedi madi. Hashem said, you should stand with me. Post facto, Hashem agreed to him. So in the Gemara, it sounds like it was coming, the idea that he should separate from his wife was coming from Moshe Rabbeinu himself. Over here, it sounds like it came from Hashem. Okay, it's a slight variation. But the Radal brings that in the Zohar, it says that from the time that Hashem spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu at the burning bush, from then on he's separated from his wife. And he finds an allusion to this in the pasuk. The Zohar finds an allusion to this in the pasuk. It says, "Shalne alachem al raglacha," take your shoe off your foot. So somehow that has to do with marriage or something like that. I don't know. I don't exactly understand it, but that's what the Radal says.
Because in chalitza.
But yeah, by chalitza, the woman takes off the shoe. So, okay, so it still requires an explanation. I don't know exactly. Fine, let's go weiter. Let's go further. Rabbi Shua ben Karcha Omer. Rabbi Shua ben Karcha says, "Arboim yoim asa Moshe bahar." Moshe Rabbeinu spent 40 days on the mountain. Now we're saying that the matter was by Shavuos, Vav, or Zion, Sivan, or whatever. Moshe Rabbeinu went. The Jews after Vav or Zion, after the original giving of the Torah, so the Jews went back to their tents. Moshe Rabbeinu stayed up with Hashem. So Moshe Rabbeinu stayed up in Hashem. Arboim yoim asa Moshe bahar. Moshe Rabbeinu stayed at the mountain for 40 days. Koreh b'mikra b'yoyim v'shena b'mishnah b'layla. Moshe Rabbeinu read Mikra during the day, meaning he read, let's say, Tanakh or Torah Shebechsav during the day, and he was learning Mishnah at night. He was learning Mishnah, meaning he was studying Torah Shebal Peh at night. So we're going to focus a little bit on this. Why is he studying Dafka Torah Shebechsav during the day and Torah Shebal Peh at night? We're going to have to focus on that a little bit. But just the Pashat Pshat, the Bayis HaGadol says, and the Radal say, that the Pshat is that, well, it's very simple. Torah Shebechsav is written down. Now, if you want to learn something that's written down, you want to be able to read it, so you need light. You need to be able to see it. So when is there light? During the day. So that's why you learn Torah Shebechsav during the day. Torah Shebal Peh, you don't need to see anything. You know it by heart. So Torah Shebal Peh is the oral Torah. You have it in your head, or you have it verbally, so you don't need light. So you can learn it at night, so you learn that at night. That's like the Pashup Pshat. Now the Rikanti, there's a few discussions over here. But let's start like this. The Rikanti, one of the early Kabbalah Svarim, he brings down a Parshas Yisro. The Rikanti writes like this. He says, "Vida, you should know, Kitzarech Adam, a man has to lihisasik b'Torah shebechsav b'yayim and b'Torah shebal peh b'layla. A man has to study Torah shebechsav during the day and Torah shebal peh at night." That's what the Rikanti says. Meaning, he brings our Medrash over here. So he's bringing our Medrash as a source for how one should go about learning Torah. Specifically, Torah Shebechsav during the day, Torah Shebal Peh at night. And we'll explain exactly why this should be. But just at face value, what he says over here. The Chidah and Birkei Yosef also bring this down, and the Be'er Heitev also brings this down. So it's brought down in the Halachas form, that Torah Shebechsav during the day, Torah Shebal Peh at night. Now, that sounds like, let's say, you're not supposed to learn Torah Shebechsav at night. That's what it seems to be saying, right? So why is that true? So Mishnah Berurah writes in Rachamim Siman Reish Lamed Ches Shar Tzion Sivkod and Aleph. Mishnah Berurah writes, no, it doesn't mean that there's an isser to learn Torah Shebechsav at night, the written Torah at night. Rather, it means that if you have Torah Shebechsav, you have written Torah to learn. If you want to learn it during the day or during the night, it's better to learn it during the day than to learn it at night. But it doesn't mean you're not allowed to learn it during the night. It just means that it's better during the day than during the night. Right? That's the halachic aspect. But the idea is, what's the machshava aspect over here of why Torah Shebechsav, the written Torah, is supposed to be studied during the day? What does it have to do with day? And the oral Torah, what does it have to do with night? Well, what's going on over here? So it's like this. When we talk about day and night, so you could say like this: day and night is, the day is typified by the sun, and the night is typified by the moon. And once we understand that, we could say like this: the relationship between the sun and the moon is a relationship between a mashpia and a makabel, one who influences and one who receives influence. The moon doesn't have its own light. The shine of the moon is really a reflection of the light of the sun coming from the moon. Right? So the sun is really the one that's giving the hashpah, the one who's giving off influence, influencing something else. And the moon is receiving its influence from the sun. So the sun typifies the giver of influence, and the moon typifies the recipient of influence. Yeah. Another difference between the sun and the moon is the way it works. Is the sun is more or less the same sun every single day. It's one ball over there in the sky. It doesn't change. It doesn't change. The moon, on the other hand, waxes and wanes. It gets bigger, it gets smaller, it changes around, whatever. That's the way the moon works. Another difference is that the sun stays in the same place. It's static. It's stationary. It doesn't move. The sun, everything revolves around the sun, but the sun itself stays in the middle. The moon, on the other hand, is the opposite. The moon revolves around us, goes around us. So in a way, if you want to compare it to the relationship between a man and a woman, which, if you know a little bit of pagan mythology, that's what they do in a lot of places. You know, Baal and Asherah is the sun and the moon. Or in Greek mythology, you have Apollo and Diana, which are the sun and the moon. It's the same idea. So the sun is obviously the Zohar, the male force, and the moon is the female force. Right? So it's the same idea that the male force is mashpia, gives off influence, it provides, and the female force accepts it and then builds upon whatever it receives. In the same way, the male force is in the inside, and the female force is surrounds it. The pasuk says, "Nekeva tesevev gever," the female surrounds the man. That's why the kala goes around the chassan 7 times by the chuppah, right? And the sun is like a chassan in a way. In Parak Shira it says that the sun, the shira of the sun is that it says Hashemayim mesaprim kivoikel u'maisei yado magir rakia. That's what the shira of the sun is. And it says a few psukim later. It says, what about the sun? Hu kechasen yetze michupasai. The sun is like a chasen coming out of his chuppah. So the sun is like the male force, right? And the Gemara says that kol adar b'lei isha kilu dar b'lei chayma. A person who lives without a wife is like he's living without a wall. What's a wall? The wall surrounds whatever is being protected. So the nekeva, the force of the nekeva, also surrounds the zohar. That's the idea of the moon. So we have these different ideas of the sun and the moon, the day and night, whatever. Okay, so how does this work into Torah Shebechsav and Torah Shebal Peh? So there's a few ways you can say it. You can say like this. In a pashut way, you could say that Torah Shebechsav and Torah Shebal Peh is like Zohar and Nekeva. Torah Shebechsav is the raw material, the raw seed that the Zohar provides, and the Nekeva works on it. So Torah Shebechsav is like, it's the raw text. It's just there. It is what it is, and the Torah Shebal Peh develops it more into something greater, something bigger than the actual source. That's one way of looking at it. Another way you could say it is that Torah Shebechsav is a focus on the giver. What does it say in Torah Shebechsav? Koyamar Hashem, it says Zeh Davar Asher Tziva Hashem. The focus is on Hashem giving over the Torah. The focus is on the influencer, so that's why it has to do with the shemesh during the day. Mashenkin Torah Shebal Peh. So what does it say in Torah Shebal Peh? Omer Rabbi Kiva, Divrei Rabbi Meir, etc. The focus is not on Hashem. The focus is on the people that received the Torah, how they understand it and how they're saying it over. So there, it's a focus on the recipient. So Torah Shebal Peh is dafka matim to the night, which is the moon. The moon is the recipient. Another similar way you could say it is that like the Torah Shebechsav is a static text. It doesn't change. The text is what the text is. It doesn't. There's no changes. There's no different gersos. We don't work with different gersos, and there's no havamin or maskana. The Torah it's a static text. So it's the shemesh, which the shemesh is the same thing every day. It doesn't change. Masha Enkin, the Torah Shebal Peh is like the moon, because the moon is more fluid. It changes. It's more fluctuations. By Torah Shebal Peh, you have a havamina, you have a maskana. Something changed between the havamin and the maskana. You have different girsas. You have all kinds of different changes. So the Torah Shebal Peh is a development. It's coming out like the moon. It waxes and wanes. So these are different ideas. Why Dafka Moshe Rabbeinu studied Torah Shebechsav during the day and Torah Shebal Peh at night. There's a few questions you can ask. You say, what do you mean? David HaMelech said Tehillim at night, right? So Tehillim is Torah Shebechsav. So why does it say it at night? Okay, hopefully we'll get an answer to that. Okay, let's go weiter. After 40 days, Lokach es Luchos v'yored el machane. After 40 days, Moshe Rabbeinu took the Luchos and he came down to the camp of where Klal Yisrael was encamped. Uveshiva sor betamuz shiber es haluchos. Actually, it's not clear what the gear says. Is there shiber es haluchos or shavar es haluchos? On the 17th of Tammuz, Moshe Rabbeinu was shiber es haluchos, means he smashed the Luchos, like a very intense way of doing it, or shavar es haluchos, he broke the Luchos. What does your gear say? Shiber. Okay.
And I would say that makes more sense.
Makes more sense.
Angry and threw them
He
down.
threw them. So shiber es haluchos, he smashed them. V'harag es laita Yisrael, and he killed the cursed ones of Bnei Yisrael, meaning he killed the ones who had engaged in the worship of the golden calf. The Ramban has a different girsa that he killed v'harag es chayte Yisrael, the sinners of Klal Yisrael. Light means the curse. So like the cursed ones, who are the cursed ones? Those are the sinners. Could be it's the same thing. It's the same shot. Just which word does the Medrash choose? V'asa arba'im yoim b'machane. And Moshe Rabbeinu spent 40 days in the Machane, in the camp of Bnei Yisrael. Ad shesaraf es ha'egel, until he burnt the egel, v'chitzvei kafar ha'aretz, and he disintegrated it like the dirt of the land. V'harag es kol asher nashak le'egel, and he killed everyone, executed everyone who had kissed the calf. Which the Radal points out that all these things happened on actually the day after the Yud Zayin Tammuz. So this was all the day after. And the next thing, this is what really took him 40 days. V'hichris avodah zarah miYisrael, and Moshe Rabbeinu cut off the existence of avodah zarah from within Klal Yisrael. And the Radal says that means that he went around and tried to find who has some sort of small root, some sort of small inclination towards avodah zarah, and he went and he chastised them and tried to bring them back to tshuva, so that that it wouldn't grow into fruition, it wouldn't blossom into fruition and become full-fledged avodah zarah at a later point. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu did. V'hiskin kol shevet b'mkeimai, and he instituted each tribe in its place. The Radal explains that when Bnei Levi went and killed all those who had worshipped the golden calf, so there was somewhat of a civil war amongst Bnei Yisrael, so things became chaotic and people had moved around or whatever. So Moshe Rabbeinu spent time to just reorganize everyone and make sure that each person is with his own family, with his own shevet, etc. So it says that Moshe Rabbeinu spent 40 days doing this in the camp. So again, we had from Shavuos until Yud Zayin Tammuz, Moshe Rabbeinu was up. That was 40 days. Moshe Rabbeinu was up in the mountain, getting the first Luchos. From Yud Zayin, let's say Yud Ches Tammuz, for the next 40 days, Moshe Rabbeinu was in the camp dealing with all these different issues that arise. He was trying to fix up, reorganize, get rid of the roots of avodah zarah, etc. Fix up everything. Yeah. So now that's 40 days. Now what are we holding? We're holding Chavtes Av, right? That now it's Rosh Chodesh Elul, okay, the day before Rosh Chodesh Elul, right? And now we're going to, afterwards, the Medrash talks about what happens Rosh Chodesh Elul. Okay. Now, I'm sure you're wondering that this narrative is not what you're familiar with. Whoa! Right? You're probably familiar with what Rashi and Chumash says. Rashi and Chumash says that Moshe Rabbeinu went up to Har Sinai for 3 periods of 40 days. From Shavuos till Yud Zayin Tammuz, he went up to get the first Luchos. From Yud Ches Tammuz until Rosh Chodesh Elul, till Chavtes Av, he went up to ask for Mechila. And then from Rosh Chodesh Elul until Yom Kippurim, Moshe Rabbeinu was up there getting the second pair of Luchos. That's what Rashi and Chumash says. And Rashi is following really Seder Olam Perek Vav, which says this pshat. And Rashi usually, as we've mentioned before, that Rashi usually goes with Seder Olam. So that's the Seder Olam's pshat. Rashi and Seder Olam go like that. And over here, we're saying a slightly different thing. We're saying, no, the first 40 days, yeah, we agree with the first 40 days. The second 40 days, no, Moshe Rabbeinu didn't go up Har Sinai. Moshe Rabbeinu was in the camp taking care of all these issues that came about. He was trying to get rid of the avodah zarah in the camp and trying to reorganize the Shvatim. He was in the camp. He didn't go up Har Sinai the second 40 days. So what it seems over here is there's a machlekes between Pirkei Eliezer and Seder Olam. Machlekes. Now it's interesting. There's 2 pieces of the Gra about this. The Gra in Aderes Eliyahu, in Parshas Kisisa, he writes, he brings this machlekes, and he says that Pashup Pshat in the Psukim sounds like Pirkei Eliezer, and he endorses the pshat of the Pirkei Eliezer. He goes like the Pirkei Eliezer, which is interesting because like the mainstream pshat is like Seder Olam and Rashi, and the Goyen doesn't go like that. The Goyen goes like Pirkei Eliezer. He says that that's the pshat and that's the psukim. It's true. I don't want to. It's too technical right now to take out a chumash and go through the psukim and see how really it could be the Goyen is probably right. Anyways, that the pashup pshat in the psukim does sound like Moshe Rabbeinu hung out, but he stayed in the machana during the second 40 days. It's true. But that's not what they teach in the Chadar. We learn. I mean, I don't know about your cheder, but we learn Rashi. Rashi says he went up for the second 40 days. Now the Goyen, there's another piece of the Goyen. The Goyen in his Pirush on Seder Olam also brings the Machlekes, Pirkei Eliezer, and the Seder Olam, and the Goyen says a different pshat over there. The Goyen tries to reconcile these two explanations. The Radal calls it a doichek, and it does sound very funny what the Goyen does, but Lamaisa, he sort of bridges the gap between them. The Goyen says that really Moshe Rabbeinu, he didn't go up the mountain the second time for 40 days. That's not what he did. But he spent 40 days down in the Machna taking care of all these problems. But during those 40 days, every day he went up the mountain to daven and came back down. So really both are right. Really he was in the Machna for 40 days, for the second 40 days, and Seder Olam is also right that he went up during the second 40 days, because each day he went up and came back down. That's how the Goyen reconciles these two approaches of the Pirkei Eliezer and the Seder Olam. And now, if you want, you can go call up Kupa the Ear and tell them, you see there's a school of 40 days, go daven Har Sinai. It's a big thing. Where do these things come from? It comes from like something like this, that Moshe Rabbeinu went up for 40 days. He went, you go to the Kretzler every day for 40 days. You go to the Kiver or whatever for 40 days. That's like a similar idea.
Right. Oh, nice.
Lahavdil. Maybe. Fine. Says the Medrash. On Rosh Chodesh Elul, Hashem said to Moshe, Alei Elai Hahara, come up to me on the mountain, to the mountain. So Hashem said, Moshe Rabbeinu, come back to the mountain, come back up to me. Now, the problem is that if Moshe Rabbeinu goes back up the mountain, we're going to have a problem over here, because maybe people are going to do Avodah Zarah like the first time he went up. So what do they do to get out of the problem? And you're going to have to help me understand how this helps. But this is what it says in the Medrash. They passed a shofar through the entire camp, meaning they blew shofar through the whole camp. Because behold, Moshe is going up the mountain. So that people won't stumble, so people won't err again after Avodah Zarah. How does this help? How does blowing the shofar help? Okay, well, we'll have to speak about it let's just finish a few lines. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu was brought up on that day through that shofar. It says the pasuk, Ola Elokim b'Teruah Hashem b'kol shofar. Hashem, Elokim goes up through the Teruah. Hashem goes up through the call of the shofar, through the voice of the shofar. V'alkein hiskiru chachamim, and because of this, therefore, the rabbis, the sages instituted shiyu taken by shofar Rosh Chodesh Elul b'chol shana v'shana, that you should blow the shofar on Rosh Chodesh Elul every single year. Okay, so there's like a lot of things that we just read over here. What do they do here? They blew the shofar when Moshe Rabbeinu went up the mountain, so that people won't make a mistake after Avodah Zarah. How does that help? Well, what do you say?
I don't
know. The Radal wants to say that the sort of a pshat is that blowing the shofar, first it says that blowing the shofar sort of symbolized that, like, okay, we're making a gedder, we're making a fence that we're not going to do Avodah Zarah anymore. This is like our establishing, we're not doing Avodah Zarah. Not clear exactly how blowing the shofar did that. Then the Radal sort of says a different pshat, that blowing the shofar is a way of establishing the malchus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Gemara in Rosh HaShanah says, say in front of me, Malchus, in Musaf of the Musaf Shemana Esrei of Rosh HaShanah, so we say three special brachas: Malchus, Malchus, Rechenis, and Shofars. So what's Malchus? So it says Imru Fani Malchus Kadesh Tamlichuni Alechem. Say Malchus in front of me, so in order to make me into your king, right? And then it says, why do we say Zechenis? Kadesh Yala Zechencha Lefan of Lateva, so Hashem will remember us for good. And the Gemara says Ubameh, and how should we all of this come about? B'Shofar, through a shofar. So the Radal draws from that Gemara that through the shofar we bring out the Malchus of Hashem. B'Chatzos we call shofar Haril Lufnei Melech Hashem. That's a pasuk in them. With Chatzos and a call of the voice of a shofar, you cry out in front of Hashem. When the king comes, they blow trumpets in order to announce the coming of the king. So when you blow the shofar, you're announcing the coming of Hashem, and that brings out the covenant of Hashem. So when Moshe Rabbeinu went up the mountain, they're announcing, Hashem is coming. Hashem is on his way, at least within the next 40 days or so. So they blew the shofar in order to solidify that idea, in order to announce it. That's Pashas Pshat, sort of what's happening over here.
But it was only on one day, according to this. Rosh Chodesh Elul.
That's what it... Okay, so right.
He left.
So that...
We blow every day, and you think every day you should remember...
Oh.
Don't do it over there. And yet here it says...
So hold on to that thought. We'll get back to that thought in a moment. The Marami Rutenberg, one of the Gedolei Ashkenaz, Rishonim of Ashkenaz, Marami Rutenberg has a sefer called Minhagim Debei Maram, on page 37, the Marami Rutenberg writes that the reason why they blew shofar when Moshe Rabbeinu went up the mountain is in order to confuse the Satan, so that the Satan won't try to get them to do Avodah Zarah. That's why they blew the shofar, to confuse the Satan, so the Satan won't get them to do Avodah Zarah. That's what the Maram writes. And the Rosh, in the end of Maseches Rosh HaShanah, the Rosh in the end of Maseches Rosh HaShanah brings this piece of Pirkei Eliezer over there. And he has a few. The Rosh over there, when he brings it, he adds another sentence. He says, so that they won't do Avodah Zarah and so that they'll do tshuva. Like the Rambam in Hilchos Tshuva, was it Perek Dalet, Perek Hey, I don't remember. The Rambam writes, what's the idea of the shofar? Even he said, the Rambam writes specifically. The Rambam writes, even though the idea of a shofar is Gezeres HaMelech, it's a scriptural imperative. It's because the cause of the Torah says you have to blow shofar. That's what it is. But it also has some sort of symbolism because it's reminding you, wake up, you people, from your slumber and do tshuva. That's what the Rambam says. So that's idea. There's like an inherent idea in the shofar to remind you to do tshuva. So the Rosh is sort of saying that's why they blew shofar when Moshe Rabbeinu went up to Har Sinai, to remind people to do tshuva also. Probably like part of doing tshuva for the Cheder Egel or something like that. That's what the Rosh writes. There's another Nakuda also in the Rosh. The Rosh writes like this. The Rosh brings our medrash, and then afterwards, the Rosh writes that the minhag in Ashkenaz is that the entire month you blow shofar during the day and in the evening after davening. And nowadays, Al Pi the Ramah, we only do it in the morning after Shachris. But there are, I think, Yekas maybe they do it also after Ma'ariv, I believe. Maybe some Yekas they do it also after Ma'ariv. That the source is from this Rosh. That's the source for blowing shofar during Elul. Now you're right. Now that's like this. The Rosh brings our medrash the way we have it in front of us. It says that they blew it on Rosh Chodesh Elul, and then it says, and the rabbis instituted you should blow it every year on Rosh Chodesh Elul, specifically the first day. And the Rosh says, besides that, there's a minhag to do it every day of Elul. So our medrash is not the direct source for blowing shofar during Elul. It's it's derived from our medrash. It's not directly. Our medrash says Rosh Chodesh Elul, and then they took, I guess, the minhag became to take it a step further. The minhag Ashkenaz was to take it a step further and blow every day during Elul. The Radal points out that when the tour in Siman Tov Kuf Pei Aleph in Rachamim, talks about this. The Tur changes the lashon of the Pirkei Eliezer when he brings it, and he says that they were misaken that you should blow shofar b'chol shana v'shana u'b'chol chodesh, and the entire month. So the Tur already brings Pirkei Eliezer as the source for blowing shofar during the entire Elul. And Minaras HaMa'or also has the same girsa.
Did you find that?
What? In the manuscripts of Pirkei Eliezer? No, I did not. Maybe they had a different version. Maybe they're just taking the minhag and interpreting Pirkei Eliezer in light of what the minhag was. But the Radal agrees with this girsa that it says in the entire month, because he is bothered by your question. He says, what do you mean? Why does it help that they won't stray after Avodah Zarah to just blow the first day that he went up? The last time that they strayed, it wasn't the first day Moshe Rabbeinu left. It was the last day. It was like the 39th day.
That was saying Dafka should blow Erev Rosh HaShanah, which is the day we Dafka don't blow.
Well, one second. Okay. So he says that Avada. He says for sure the gears has to be that you have to do it the whole month. To blow every day so that they won't end up making a mistake. Okay, you're asking another question. You're asking, well, then it should come out that really the Iker day of blowing shofar is going to be the day before Rosh Hashanah, even though nowadays our minhag is not to blow the day before Rosh Hashanah. Okay, it could be, but you're still not losing the idea of blowing each day so that they won't stray after Avodah Zarah. The reason why we don't blow on Erev Rosh Hashanah is more technical reason, because we want to make a separation between blowing of a minhag and blowing of a chiyuv. What other reasons did you hear?
Zev said because if you do it, or he brought a grub. The reason why we don't blow is because if you do for Shloshim Yom, you create a chazaka of some kind, and I don't understand that.
Well, and then
so
now what?
Don't do it for Shloshim Yom. So you do it for 29 days.
Okay.
Erev Rosh HaShanah be the Yom Shloshim.
Yeah, there's all.
And then the question was, well, Shabbos you don't blow, but anyway, then they came around that and they had a.
Yeah, there's different minhagim over here about it. The Radal brings from the Sefer Rekeach and Siman Reish Ches. The Rekeach writes that the minhag was to blow from Rosh Chodesh Elul until Yom Kippur. We don't do that. We stop at Rosh Hashanah. We don't blow during Aseret Yemei Tshuva, but they used to blow during Yom Kippur. Not during Aseret Yemei Tshuva all the way up until Yom Kippur.
Which would actually make a lot more sense because it was Yom Kippur that he came down the mountain.
Right.
So there's no point to blowing it.
Right. Oh wait, 1 second. You just answered your question, by the way.
Yeah, I just realized that's not.
Yeah, Moshe Rabbeinu didn't come down Erev Rosh Hashanah. He came down Erev Yom Kippur.
It
was from Kippur.
It needs to be 40 days.
I just realized that also. But the Radal says the reason why we don't do like the Rekeach, because we understand that the source is the way the Tur has the Girsa in the Pirkei Eliezer, which just says B'kol Shana u'B'chol Chodesh, right? And then it's just that month. It's just the month of Elul. It's not including the first few days of Tishrei as well. So therefore, we only blow during Elul, and then then we stop by Erev Rosh HaShanah. Actually, in the Marami Rutenberg over there, he says that you stop 3 days before Rosh Hashanah. He doesn't say don't do it Erev Rosh Hashanah. He says don't do it for 3 days before Rosh Hashanah. Blow the whole Elul except for 3 days before Rosh Hashanah, which is interesting. He doesn't explain why or whatever, but I don't know exactly what the reason of the Marami Rutenberg is. Another idea over here is the Marami Rutenberg says another reason why we blow shofar during the month of Elul, and the Marami Rutenberg says a sort of practical idea. Why do we blow shofar during the month of Elul? So the Marami Rutenberg says that the pshat is because you want to get used to doing the mitzvah. Just like we say, Shailim v'darshim binyanei achag shlishim yom kaidem achag, 30 days before Yantif, before Pesach, before Sukkot, whatever, you start discussing the halachas and getting into it or whatever. So too, before Rosh Hashanah, for 30 days, you want to practice blowing shofar. That's what Marami Rutenberg says. So, actually, Zevi Stark showed me in a sefer from Rosh Zalman Auerbach. Rosh Zalman Auerbach says a difference, a halachic nafkamina between Marami Rutenberg's pshat and what we've been saying until now. If the idea is it has to do with tshuva and it has to do with not doing avodah zarah, it has to do with the zeicher for what happened over there by Matan Torah, so then who should blow a shofar? It doesn't really matter who blows a shofar. The point is that the shofar was blown. But if you learn like the Maharami Rutenberg that the point of blowing the shofar during Elul is to practice doing the mitzvah of shofar for Rosh HaShanah, it's the way of practicing for Rosh HaShanah, so then there's an inyan that specifically the same guy who's going to blow on Rosh Hashanah should blow the entire Elul. Because the whole thing is to practice. So what are you practicing for unless you're the guy who's going to be the one blowing? It's an interesting idea. What's the minhag? People, it's usually the same guy or it's usually not the same guy? I don't know.
I know that Rabbi Edelstein blows on Rosh Hashanah.
Yeah.
And my shver blows
during the week
in shul.
Uh-huh.
And Rabbi Edelstein is standing there.
Interesting.
Not blowing. It's my shver, so.
Yeah, I know. It's an interesting idea. If the whole thing is just to practice, so
that's a lot of practice. I mean, it's not a lot of. It's shloshim yom, as you're saying, but still, it's not practice.
Yeah.
It is okay.
Okay, before we go weiter, I wanted to speak about another nifkud over here. There it is. Okay, so we brought a pasuk. It says like this. It says, "Olo Elokim b'tzruah Hashem b'kol shofar." Hashem went up with the Truah. Olo Elokim, the Elokim went up with the Truah. Hashem went up with the voice of the shofar. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the Mufarshim Chazal tell us there's a difference between when the pasuk, when Torah uses. First of all, this pasuk, Olo Elokim b'tzruah, Tehillim Mem Zayin, is the from that chapter of Tehillim that we say 7 times before we start blowing the shofar on Rosh Hashanah. So Chazal tell us that the name of Hashem, and the name of Hashem, of Elokim, represent 2 different hanhagas that we perceive of Hashem. That it looks like Hashem acts with us in 2 different ways. The name Hashem represents when Hashem acts with us with Rachamim, and the name Elokim represents when Hashem acts with us with what we perceive to be din. Elokim is din, Hashem is Rachamim. Yeah. So what's the difference between din and Rachamim? So we've already spoken about this a few times, but the difference is that when we talk about Rachamim, so the idea of Rachamim is a focus on the giver. When we focus on din, when we talk about din, the focus is on the receiver. Rachamim is, I'm giving no matter what. I don't care about you. I'm just giving. Din is, well, first we're going to look at you and see whether you deserve it or not. And if you deserve it, so then I'll give it to you. If you don't deserve it, I don't give it to you. Din is like, withholding if you don't deserve it, if you're not ready for it or whatever. So first you have to look at the receiver before you can decide. I've said my Rebbe Abelio Margolis likes to say a mashal. I've said the mashal before. You have a gvir, a philanthropist, who gives away a lot of money. So he has two ways of giving away a lot of money. The first way is on Purim. He has already pre-written and pre-signed a whole bunch of checks. Every check is for $100. And anyone who comes to him, automatically he gives you a $100 check. Doesn't matter what you're collecting for, $100 check. The rest of the year, the way it works is you come to his dining room, you sit down with him, you tell him what you're collecting for, and he says, okay, you deserve $5. You deserve $10. You $50, $100, you $500, you $1,000. Each person gets a different amount depending on whether it's a worthy cause, whether it's not a worthy cause, etc. So the first hanhaga, the first way of acting is what we call rachamim, because he's just giving it out. He doesn't care whether you deserve it, you don't deserve it, who you are, whatever. I'm just giving it out. The second way, that's what we call din. Do you deserve? What do you deserve exactly? Let's figure it out. The focus is on you, not on the giver. The focus is on the receiver. Those are the 2 hanhagas. Now, the idea of the shofar, the voice of the shofar, the sound of the shofar, the blowing of the shofar, is symbolizes the hashpah that we get from Hashem, the hashpah that the world receives from Hashem. It says in the pasuk when Hashem created man, which according to Rabbi Eliezer, happened on Rosh HaShanah. Right? When Hashem created man, it says vayipach ba'apov nishmas chayim. Hashem blew into a man's nose a living soul. Hashem blew into man, and the Nefesh HaChaim speaks about how in order for the world to continue to exist, Hashem has to constantly be quote-unquote blowing into the world a shefa that will keep the world to continue existing. Right? So the shofar is meramis, the blowing into the shofar is a remes to Hashem blowing into the world. giving us breath, giving us life. One of the differences between din and rachamim is that rachamim is uninterrupted. It's constant. It's a continuous flow. When you talk about din, so din is an interrupted flow. Because din, I have to stop and see. Do you deserve it? You don't deserve it? Okay, I'll give you now. Wait, now you don't deserve it. Okay, now I'm going to stop. Now you deserve it. I'll give you a little bit more. Now you don't deserve it. It's stop, go. Right? Masha'en ken rachamim is just one complete flow. So I was makabel from my Rebbeim that's the idea of a trua. A trua is the idea of din. A trua is it's multiple sounds together. It's either 3 sounds or 9 sounds or 3 and then 9 sounds. Right? It's not one continuous sound. It's a bunch of it goes, stops, stops, etc. That's like din. Where the din is, it's not a continuous flow. It's a flow that's according to what you deserve, according to what's needed. That's the idea of trua. So that's
on Yom Din.
Well, on Yom Din. So that's why it says over here. Listen to this. That's why it says over here. Allah Elokim b'trua. Elokim goes up with trua because Elokim is midas adin. So Elokim is brought out through the trua. The idea of midas adin is brought out through the trua. But Hashem is b'kol shofar. Kol shofar means the Tekiah. Hashem, which is Rachamim, the idea of Hashem is brought out through the call of the Shofar, of the Tekiah, which is the straight flow, the straight sound, without any interruptions. That's how that's how to understand this pasuk over here. Although Elokim b'trua, Hashem b'kol Shofar. But there's another aspect. This is mamish very interesting. The Sefer Kabbalah speaks out on Rosh HaShanah. We do something called Mesikas Adinim. Sweetening the din, making the din sweet. So what does that mean? You make the din sweet. So in a crude physical mashal, I can say that you take a din, which is, call it bitter, or it seems to be bitter, and you dip it into something sweet. You take an apple, which is not necessarily so sweet, and you dip it into honey, which is sweet. You take the din and you're making the din sweet now. That's the idea of dipping an apple into honey. You're being mamtik the dinim. You're taking an apple and you're making it into something sweet. So the trua is the same thing. The trua is the din. It's a harsh dinim. Maybe hopefully not, but trua is din. So what do? You dress it up. You take a tekiah, which is rachamim. You put a tekiah before it. You put a tekiah after it, and you sweeten the trua. Now it's not just a trua on its own. It's a trua with a little bit of rachamim before, a little bit of rachamim after, and that's the sweetening of the dinim that the Sefer Kabbalah are speaking about on Rosh HaShanah. And that the Kabbalah Svarim say that Tekiah Shofar is mamtik the dinim. That's what they say. Tekiah Shofar is mamtik the dinim. How so? So they said because the Tekiah before and the Tekiah after the trua, the Tekiah before the trua and the Tekiah after the trua sort of, I don't say neutralize, but sort of make it tone down the din. They make it a little bit sweeter. And the Ramban himself, actually, Parshas Amar, writes that Rosh Hashanah is Yom Din Berachamim. What is that? He says Rosh Hashanah is Yom Din Berachamim, and Yom Kippurim is Yom Rachamim Bedin. We'll leave Yom Kippurim aside. But what does it mean that Rosh Hashanah is Yom Din Berachamim? So you could take it literally. It's din, it's the apple, inside rachamim. It's dipped in rachamim. It's dipped in honey, and honey is obviously the sweetest type of thing that's possible. It's like the epitome of sweetness. When David HaMelech writes in Tilim that the Torah is the sweetest thing, so he says Mesukim midvash v'nefesuvim. It's even sweeter than honey. Right? What could be sweeter than honey to say that the Torah is sweeter than that? Nothing. That's why he said honey. Right? That's the dinim, the mamtik, the dinim of Yom Kippur, of Rosh Hashanah. Al Kopanim, so you can say like this, that the day, as we said before, that the day is a focus on the mashpia, on the one who's giving hashpah. The sun is the mashpia, is the one who gives influence. Right? So the day is a time of rachamim. The night is a time of din, because the night is typified by the moon. The moon is a recipient, and when we focus on the recipient, that's what din is. So the question is, so why do we say slichos at night? Okay, if you say slichos during the day, so it makes sense because day is rachamim. But what about night? So it seems like there's two types of night. There's a night, the first part of the night. The first part of the night is when the sun is going away. It's getting, or whatever, we're turning farther and farther away from the sun. We're getting away from the sun. So when it's going away, that's harsh dinim. Dinim kashim, which we want Hashem to save us from. We don't want to get involved with dinim kashim. We don't play around. So the first part of the night till the middle of the night is harsh dinim. We don't want to get involved. We don't say slichos during time of harsh dinim. The best thing to do is like run under a rock and hide. That's what you do in the time of harsh dinim. From midnight till the beginning of the day, we're getting closer and closer to the sun. So the din is there. It's still din because there's no sun out, but it's sort of dissipating. It's coming closer and closer to the day. There, you already have an opening that it's in certain ways it's a time of rachamim, and now you could say slichos. So that's why you have to wait dafka till chatzos of the night. Tonight we're going to say slichos. I mean, some people will say slichos after chatzos, because then it's starting to the rachamim is starting to come out after chatzos, because we're getting closer to the sun. The sun is coming up soon. And I wanted to say that that's also the pshat in David Melech. We said that Torah shebichsav you're supposed to do during the day, Torah shebal peh you're supposed to do at night. And I asked the question, what do you mean? David Melech, pasuk says in Tehillim, I think Kufya Tes, I wake up in the middle of the night to praise you. And the Gemara talks about how David Melech had a harp, and the wind would blow in the middle of the night and wake him up, and then he'd start davening, whatever. The Gemara Brachas has a whole story about it. But what do you mean? I understood that he was saying Tehillim. Maybe you can have a different understanding. But I understood he was saying Tehillim. Because what else was David Melech saying, right?
That's one opinion.
What?
That he would wake up at that time and say Shvachos.
Shiras is Shvachos.
Shiras is Shvachos. That's not only one opinion. There's several opinions there. He would learn.
Okay, fine. But let's say he was saying Shiras with Tishbachas. I understand that that's Tehillim. So why was he saying Tehillim? Tehillim Torah Shebechsav. It's at night. So the answer is because it's after Chatzos. After Chatzos is not the harsh dinim of the rest of the night. After Chatzos is already an opening for Rachamim. Okay, that's my thoughts on that pasuk of Allah Elokim b'Yisrael Hashem b'Kol Shofar. What time is it?
9:30.
Want to stop here or you want to do a few more lines? What do you say? We'll do a few more lines. Rav Kana Omer. Rav Kana says, the other gear says Rav Tachana Omer. Rav Tachana says, because Rav Kana was an Amoraic sage. Rebbe Kahana? That's an interesting gear. So, see, Rav Kana is an Amora, and Tekiah Eliezer was before the Amoraim, so it's very hard to have the gear of Rav Kana. Rav Tachana is someone who's never mentioned anywhere else except for later on in Tekiah Eliezer and Perek Nun Gimel, which it would assume that he's some sort of Tana. Okay, but you have a different Rebbe Kahana, which
Rav is not even Shayach. No, it is.
It could be not. I don't know. Al Kaponim, the Radal likes this gift of Rav Tachana because he says that the Seder Darius also has that girsa. But my Pirkei Eliezer, the text says Rav Tana. Whoever it was, he said, "Haluchos le'nivru min ha'aretz ela min ha'shamayim." The tablets were not created from the earth; they were not created from the world. Let's say the physical world, the aretz ela min ha'shamayim. They were from the heavens, from the spiritual world. Ma'aseh yadav shel Kadosh Baruch Hu, the handiwork of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Let's say Kibiyachol. Shemar says the pasuk about Luchos ma'aseh Elokim hema. The Luchos, the tablets, are the product of Hashem. They are the product of Hashem. Ma'aseh Elokim hema. Hema haluchos shahayu mikedem. What does it mean? Hema. Hema means like they are. It's superfluous to say that. Haluchos ma'aseh Elokim. You could just say the Luchos are ma'aseh Elokim. Why does it say Hema? As if like they're there. So it says Hema haluchos shahayu mikedem. They are there. From before, from way back when. It's from the 10 things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created Erev Shabbos ben Ishmashos, like we spoke about way back when in Perek Yutes. V'amichtav michtav elikimhu, and the script is the script of Hashem. Hu hamichtav shahayim mikedem. It's the script that was from way back when. Again, one of the 10 things that Hashem created Erev Shabbos ben Ishmashos during the days of creation. Chorus ala luchos. The pasuk says v'haluchos ma'aseh Elokim hema Engraved on the Luchos. So the Bayis HaGadol explains that the word engraved, usually we say chakuk. Engraved is chakuk, engraved on the Luchos. Why do we use a different word of charus al Luchos to mean also, which also means engraved? It's sort of not standard usage. So from that, the Medrash says, Al tikre charus, don't read it as charus, engraved, cherus. Rather, you should read it as cherus. Cherus meaning free. And Chazal and other, the Brisa in Mesachas Avos at the end called Perak Kinyan Torah. So there it says Rabbi Shul ben Levi says, Ein lecha ben Torah ela misha isek b'Torah. So that's called freedom. Freedom is learning Torah. But there's another nekuda here also. Chazal tell us that when Klal Yisrael originally accepted the Torah, so they were charus, meaning cherus mimalach hamavis. They were free from the clutches of the angel of death. They were no longer chayav misa, because when Adam Rishon sinned by the chait of the Eitz Hadas, so the Gemara says that the Nachash hitil zuama, it gave a certain zuama, a certain dirtiness into mankind that made it that death came into the world. Sort of like a Jewish concept of original sin. A dirtiness that caused that man is going to die. But when they said Nasav and Nishma, so now they became above that. They lost that zuama. But they still lost the zuama. It says in the pasuk, Ani omarti elihim atem uvnei elyon kulchem. I said that you are elihim, you're like an angel. Uvnei elyon kulchem, you're like angels. All of you are like angels. Ochein ka'adam t'musun. However, but ochein ka'adam t'musun. Like Adam, like Adam, you're going to die. Right? When they sinned by the chait of the Egel Azav, so the gzera that mankind has to die came back. This is a shayla exactly how to understand. It doesn't mean that Achein Ka'adam Tumusun means that just like Adam dies because of the sin of the Eitz Hadas, so now you also are going to die because of the sin of the Eitz Hadas. Meaning you transcended the level of Adam when you said Nasav Dishma, and then when you did the Egel, so you went back down to the level of Adam. So now you're just like everyone else? Or is it pshat that no, when you said Nasav Dishma, you transcended the level of Adam, and you're no longer, you're above death. But now that you did the chait of the Egel, so now the chait of the Egel is what's the reason why you die. Not because of the chait of the Eitz Hadas, but the reason why Jews die is because of the chait of Egel. Or no, the chait of Egel just brought them back to the level of everyone else in the world that people die because of the chait of the Eitz Hadas. So it's a shayla how to understand it. Why do Jews die? Is it because of the chait of Egel, or is it because of the chait of the Eitz Hadas? That's a shayla. When Hashem said to Moshe Rabbeinu, engrave for yourself 2 stone tablets, so the Medrash says, Machzev shel sanpirya nivra l'Moshe b'serch ahalai v'chatzovan. A machzev is let's say a chisel that could chisel sapphire, was created for Moshe Rabbeinu inside his tent, and he used that to engrave the tablets. Right? And one second.
Chisel? What do you mean? To carve out the tablets themselves, not actually the words on the tablets, or also the words on the tablets.
It seems like it's talking about the words of the tablets as well.
I thought it was Pesalecha Shtei Luchos, meaning carve out 2 new tablets, and then I guess I thought Hashem would write on them.
So the MS is, I didn't really look into this. I didn't prepare it, but there is a whole question about who wrote the second tablets. Did Moshe Rabbeinu write it, or did Hashem write it? Oh. Who wrote the words of the second tablets? If you want, I could try to come up with some marmukaimis about it for next week. Al Kaponim, the Radal brings that there's a different medrash that says that this thing that he used to chisel it was created also from Sheshes and Mebrachis, just it was revealed to Moshe now. Here it sounds like it was created now, and then Moshe Rabbeinu saw it in his tent. It was created there. I don't know. Okay, fine. I guess we'll stop over here, and Be'ezer Hashem, we will meet again next week. Any questions?